Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me once again, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's going on is today you and I are going to be talking a little bit about Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, because I finally finished that after 130 some odd hours this last week. You've been playing some Madden, so we'll talk a little bit about Madden 24. And then we'll have kind of our Final Fantasy VII block where we'll share our updated thoughts on the Rebirth Demo Part 2 that released with the Junon stuff this week, as well as you and I went and saw Advent Children. And then I spent the last few hours playing Balatro, so I will share my first impressions of that game. So that's what we have in store for today. So kicking things off, I won't go too deep into this because we've spent so much time on Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth over the last few weeks, but I did finish the game. I'm, as a reminder, coming at this from a person who's played now every Like a Dragon or Yakuza game except for 5 and 6, so I have like a little gap there near the end of Kiryu's kind of initial story stuff. We talked at length kind of in my early impressions. It was like up through chapter 4. And then I did a whole like half-hour block on Dondoku Island specifically. But now that I've finished the entirety of the game, I'll say this is easily my favorite of the Yakuza Like a Dragon stuff, in large part because it is building on everything that came before it. Obviously, as a standalone, if this was the first time you ever jumped into this, it's not that you'd be lost, because the game does a pretty good job of giving you like all of the beats you need to know to make certain moments hit and stuff, but it's definitely one of those like this is way more impactful if you know everything that has come before it. To really talk about the game in depth, I'm going to spoil like one kind of large detail, but it's introduced like at the end of chapter 3 of the story, so I don't consider it significant enough to kind of warn. Like I'll definitely include a spoiler warning for it. So if you want to kind of skip ahead and not hear kind of those thoughts, certainly feel free. But it's something that like I had kind of been spoiled on in just catching some other reviews of the game. So I don't necessarily warrant it at that same level. But where we kind of find this story, this is a very mashup of Kasuga, Ichiban Kasuga from the last game, as well as Kiryu. Kazuma Kiryu kind of comes in, and we find out pretty early on that Kazuma Kiryu is dealing with cancer and has only been given a handful of months to live. And so this is kind of like poised as his final hurrah. Whether or not that's going to be the case, who knows? The game kind of certainly leaves it open-ended in that regard as well. But that's kind of where he's at in this game. Is he and a lot of the game from his perspective is looking back on his life, the decisions he made, the decisions he could have made, those kinds of things, and that's largely what drives. About halfway through the game, you kind of go on split paths with Kasuga and his kind of crew manning and investigating stuff in Hawaii, and Kiryu goes back to Japan in Yokohama and Kamurocho and kind of works with a team there to investigate on that side of things.
So so they are on, like they're united in purpose, but on separate fronts.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for I would say about a quarter of the game, they're united on the same front. They're like Ichiban and Kiryu kind of cross paths early in chapter 3 and start working together. And they're together for a few chapters after that until kind of the story kind of splits them apart and gives Ichiban kind of a party of up to 5 people in Hawaii, and then Kiryu ends up having a party of 5 people in Japan as well. But they're like, and it trades off. So like one chapter you'll be playing as Ichiban, and then the next chapter we'll start with like a download between the two characters. Usually like, here's where we're at. Like, what are you guys up to next? And then that crew kind of takes point, and then you kind of go back and forth. No, it's not always like that, but that's kind of the gist of it. Is the the stories are happening somewhat in concert, but yeah, they're certainly coordinating throughout. Um, so it's very much mired in the turn-based gameplay that came with Yakuza Like a Dragon in the last round, and including like Kiryu's stuff, but Kiryu's stuff also is modified to also fit within the context of his old games. In particular, you'll at some point kind of unlock his like ultimate ability that lets you just go into full on like beat 'em up mode.
Nice.
For a limited time, so instead of being locked into the turn-based stuff, like he will run around, you can just punch and kick and toss people around and stuff like that using kind of the old mechanics. And so I share that kind of Kiryu spoiler up front too, because that is very much where he is coming from in this game. He's in Japan. Both he and Ichiban basically end up kind of stumbling onto the same mystery, and so they end up working in tandem to kind of try and solve what's going on, help who they need to help out, and all that stuff. And where Ichiban kind of deals with the Yakuza Like a Dragon mainstays of like, here are the sub-stories we're going to go through, and here's the wacky fun things we're going to get. Kiryu's gameplay in that regard is much more about memories of the dragon, and it's going up to a place and it sparks a memory and he thinks back on some game in the past, and you get little screenshots and you get little narrative stuff. There are a few that are kind of more detailed, and like he's got like a little side quest to go help somebody out that is going to be reminiscent of side quests from the old games, but it's very much like, here's a trip down memory lane for Kiryu in terms of like how a lot of his stuff kind of plays into effect.
It sounds like it's definitely giving you the farewell that a lot of people felt Kiryu didn't get at the end of 6.
Yeah.
Granted, that's like part of 6's theme and plot. But overall, like, yeah, I think it's a very nice a way to do like a proper farewell, so to speak.
Yeah. And he's still he is still the man with no name kind of
he's still
thing.
Joryu.
He doesn't go by Joryu here. He goes by Taika Suzuki, another alias that he's used over the years.
My man.
Suzuki, I think. But he's Kiryu to like the people who know him and stuff. There are definitely sometimes he comes out and he's like, I think you must be mistaken. But there are other times where he's like, you obviously know who I am. We're gonna like... And part of that, I think, comes from Kiryu's kind of status. The Daidoji have maybe loosened their grip a little bit on what he can and can't get away with anymore, because they're giving him a little bit of like breathing room in that regard.
Which makes sense considering the events of the man who forgot, like
the man who erased his name.
The man who erased his name. It makes sense after the events of that game.
Yeah. You also have, for Kiryu's side, you have some kind of advanced, they're called like life links, where it is like Kiryu meets up with Date, and Date starts trying to like fold people into his past and kind of like let him cross paths with people without necessarily knowing who he is or whatever. And so you get a lot of like the greatest hits of like the people who really mattered in Kiryu's life kind of pop up in those moments.
The ones that are still alive, yeah.
And then the memoirs are like a lot of the people that like, oh, he helped in the subquest, like the Pocket Circuit Racer guy and stuff like that. He'll pop up in a little sub story.
So it is really going back to those touchstones, not just like the overall narrative.
And one of my favorites. So I got most of them, but there are some that I'm obviously like, oh yeah, as I've never played as Kiryu in Onomichi, but I know Onomichio, and because he's continued on, and so like some of those things where it's like, oh, here's the things I did in Onomichi. I'm like, okay, that must be in 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Or here's critical things that happened to Haruka. Okay, that probably was in 6 or something like that.
If it's a big thing that happened to Haruka, it could be 5 or 6.
Yeah. But yeah, the one of the things I also appreciated is like he has a few that are very specifically references to Like a Dragon Ishin, where it's like, I feel like I had this very vivid dream of me being, an 18th century samurai or something like that. And so it's even like folding in a few of those as like his memories, just under the guise of a very vivid dream. So it is going throughout kind of all of the Like a Dragon or Yakuza games. And there were probably a couple even references to Judgment and Lost Judgment in there, but those were probably a little bit lost on me. So that's kind of what's going on the Kiryu side of things. And it's a really great kind of treatment of the character, examination of the character. And I think he has a lot of very beautiful moments as a result of that. And it is a very fun payoff to the decades of that character and him getting to go to places and like even him running around Kamurocho. There's not like Kamurocho in this game. There's not a ton of like main quest stuff there that happens there. There's a little bit, but it's very much like when you go back to Japan, you're going to be mostly in Yokohama, but you can also catch a cab over to Kamurocho because that was kind of how they were built in the last game too. And you can just go around and get like a bunch of those like memoirs of the dragon in Kamurocho. I was bummed I couldn't go to the mock bowl and play bowling because that's a staple of the Yakuza games for me.
Yeah.
But
do they bring back the batting cages at least?
Batting cages are and they are like that's kind of one of the first things that gets unlocked as Kiryu as a memory is like all the time he's spent at the batting cages. That's kind of one of his early back in Japan. Here's like because up until that point, Kasuga is the leader of the crew, and so one of the first points when they split, and now you have Kasuga as a leader of one crew and Kiryu as the leader of another crew. That crew's like, hey, let's take you to the batting cages. That's probably a thing you like. Let's take you to the batting cages. Let's go sing some karaoke. Those are the quintessential Kiryu Kazuma things. And
do you sing Bakamitai?
You can, yeah.
Oh, there
like
we go.
there are probably like 20 songs that you can sing or provide backup for. And yes, Bakamitai was definitely one of them. It's weird for me singing it because it's like you sing it in English if you're playing like the English language version of the game.
Oh, wow, that's wild. I could not do that.
I mean, I think you can, I think specifically in karaoke, you can switch up the language selection.
The guy who does the Japanese version of Kiryu's voice to me is like so freaking iconic as Kiryu, especially in the Bakamitai song because it's such it was a massive meme for such a long time.
I will say, I'm very glad I played the man who erased his name before this because that helped me get used to the English Kiryu voice, especially after recently playing through Yakuza 3 and Yakuza 4. Like you get a little bit of Kiryu in Yakuza Like a Dragon, like he pops up and has a cameo, and so there was like the English voice there, I think for the first time. But yeah, it's still like, oh, this is weird.
Who is his English voice?
Yang Yi, I believe. Is the actor for him. Or that might be Kasuga. I don't know. But yeah, so that's what's kind of going on the Kiryu side of things. And on the Ichiban side of things, he is going through a lot of the same kind of the way jobs are introduced in like a dragon, Yakuza Like a Dragon, was he started working for a temp company called Hello Work, and like that led you to getting new jobs and stuff. In this, jobs get unlocked by going to a travel agency called Aloha Happy, for Aloha Happy. And you'll go surfing and suddenly you unlock the Aquanaut job, which is basically like you whacking people with surfboards using, water-based abilities and stuff like that. About half the jobs carry over from the last game, and then there's just a new swath of Hawaiian-based jobs, like a pyromancer, which is fire spinning. Hula dancer is a geo dancer for the ladies. And there's just like a handful of fun jobs to switch between. The kind of base job for Kiryu is the Dragon of Dojima. And
right on.
In that job, you can basically switch between the three stances, like brawler, dragon, and rush, and brawler is going to be like you can swing people around and you can break shields and stuff with the heavy kind of hitting. The dragon job is kind of the base, and there I might be missing up the names on this. And then rush is less damage, but you get 2 hits in a row. So you can, like, if you just want to like finish off a couple enemies who have very low health, you can do that. Combat is turn-based, but you have now kind of a little movement grid that you can move around in, so you can kind of reposition, you can kind of line things up using that. You can sometimes get behind enemies and you'll do extra damage that way. If you like bash an enemy into one of your allies, they'll usually get a second hit, or if you bash an enemy into another enemy, they'll do extra damage to that extra enemy and stuff like that. Some of that kind of carries over from the last game, and some of it's new or enhanced in this one. You have all sorts of crazy fun abilities. With each of your party members, you are constantly leveling up your bond ranking with them. Think like Persona social links and stuff. And for like the first like bond levels 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, there's like a drink link where there's like a little scene that you can do, and you can kind of like have conversations with your characters, and each of those is unlocking like extra combat abilities and stuff like
nice.
that.
Okay.
Beyond that, there's also like at the bond level 10, 30, 50, 70, and 100, I think, you're unlocking the number of extra moves that they can carry over from another job. So normally, like when you switch jobs, you only will have that job's skill sets, but based on how many other moves you can kind of carry over. So like if I'm playing Ichiban as a hero, but I've also leveled up a whole bunch of like Aquanaut stuff for him, I'll have his swath of hero attacks, but then I can also move in and mix and match. Like I can pick up to 5 regular Aquanaut attacks or from any other job, and then 1 like Essence of, which is basically like your ultimate for each job level or each job type. So that's a fun like extra little mechanic there. The Hawaii setting, ton of fun, beautiful in terms of a lot of chapters or a lot of sequences happen to take place at golden hour, so it's like beautiful sunsets and just everything's like golden and very pretty. But you can also like go around and do like swimming and pick up trash, and you have to avoid boats from hitting you. Because they'll take some damage off you. Similarly, like you don't want to be necessarily running headfirst into traffic, because if a car hits you, you'll take damage. Trying to think other just kind of general stuff with the game. Outside of that, there are a couple kind of roguelike dungeons, one in Hawaii and one in Japan, that kind of get unlocked over the course of the story, where you can basically do a lot of like level grinding. You get rewards as you like power through the dungeons. They have like mini bosses. Like each level of a dungeon is 10 floors. And on the 5th floor and on the 10th floor, you're going to face off against like a boss of some type, and get some kind of, nice reward. So those are nice, like fun little, and there's also, other little kind of trinkets and stuff you can find scattered throughout those places. Those are nice places to grind up if you need. Mini games. There's a lot of fun ones. The big, centerpiece one, we talked about at length, Dondoku Island, gets unlocked, about halfway through the game, and is your Animal Crossing kind of like adventure. There's also one called Crazy Delivery. That's basically like a crazy taxi thing, but you're basically like an Uber Eats kind of driver. It's not Uber Eats per se, although I believe I did see like some Uber Eats like advertisement in the game, like in Yokohama or in Kamurocho or something, like Uber Eats things. But it's you're riding around on a bike. You gotta like pick up food, deliver it. You can pick up like bonuses and kind of go racing across. You can do flips and stuff to increase your rewards and your points and your delivery dollars and stuff like that. Another one of the big ones is Sujimon, the Sujimon League. where basically every enemy type you encounter is effectively a Sujimon, a Suji monster. I don't remember what the Suji part stands for. But they're basically like creeps. They're the creeps. When a lot of times when you encounter enemies, it'll, sometimes it'll be like, Seiryu clan, and then other times it'll just be asshole. So you're facing off against some beach bums and they're just assholes is just kind of their, like, that's the splash screen you get for them. But you can at some point you can start recruiting those enemy types, and you can basically take them into a Pokemon-esque style league where you can face off against trainers as you work your way up through the Discreet Four in this underground fighting league, and then eventually take down the champion. There's a lot of fun stuff that you can do there. You can evolve your Sujimon. You can power them up. You can you can basically like turn them into fodder for the other Sujimon if you want to level them up and stuff. What else? They call it Sicko Snap, but it's like Sujimon Snap, where it's like, hey, you can catch a trolley around Hawaii and
take photos
of the sickos that are like lining on that route. and those photos like are immediately transferred to the Hawaiian police to come and like take them out.
Oh, okay.
So that's like the narrative. That's the narrative excuse for like why you're taking pictures of these guys in like butterfly masks and just kind of Speedos and stuff. But yeah, those are basically Pokemon Snap kind of.
So sickos is like perverts, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think. I mean, just you have returning from the last game, you have Pound Mates, which is like your summon ability, where you can basically spend like in-game currency to hire allies to either fight alongside you for a few rounds or come in and do like one powerful hit. You can, like, for example, you can spend like $5,000 to bring in Nancy the Crawfish, and she'll come and help you out with like a piercing attack on some enemies. Or you can like spend $50,000 to bring her in at like a higher, strength level and stuff like that. So that's a fun kind of it's just a fun way for them and how they handle summons in the in this JRPG world. Your team members get like tag team attacks where like if you're running around as Adachi from the last game, he'll have a tag team attack with Ichiban, where they just kind of team up and basically that like tag team gauge is the infinite symbol, and that kind of fills up as you are doing battles and stuff. And once it's full, you can just kind of tag team attacks. Yeah, once it's full up, you just R2 when it's Adachi's turn, and you'll go and do like a tag team attack with Ichiban. And if you like, much like Kiryu has kind of his ultimate ability that is like, hey, I'm going to turn it into like an action game instead of an RPG.
Do some of them turn it into like a shooter or something? Or?
No, there are like Super Mario RPG type button prompts and stuff where like if you hit the button at the right time, you'll do extra damage. And same with kind of guards, you can do a perfect guard if you'd like hit the button at the right time to, take half damage or something like that. But no, for Kiryu's ultimate ability, it's the ultimate tag team move. And basically, depending on who else in your party has their ultimates build up, you basically can use all of them at once to do massive damage to everybody.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
So yeah, it's got
like an all out, like a sort of all out attack.
Yeah,
gauge.
Exactly.
Nice. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Very much. Yeah. If continuing the Persona comparisons. Speaking of Persona, early on you unlock like an MP3 player that you can basically have on your smartphone, and you
it just Sega classics?
It is. It starts out as a collection of I can't definitively say what it starts out as, because I was also playing like the deluxe edition, which I think included some extra songs and stuff. But like among the songs that I could play were a lot of like the Japanese karaoke tracks and stuff like that.
Sick.
And you can basically set up to 10 at one point or at any point in time, and you just kind of turn those on and they'll play as you're running around. When you go into battles, it switches to a battle theme, and you have to turn it back on if you walk out. Okay. So it's like I was a little annoyed by that. Or sometimes you don't, I guess. If you go into like a cutscene or something like that, that stops it. But if you're just doing battles, it'll continue playing. But yeah, around Hawaii and Japan, as part of like the things you can find a lot of CDs that are songs from various other Sega games, including Persona 4, nice. And Persona 5 have some tracks in there. I didn't see anything from Persona 3 Reload, or which I would have expected. But like, yeah, there's also like Puyo Puyo Tetris and Puyo Puyo Fantasy Tetris? Star Online and stuff like that. There's
Puyo Puyo Tetris has some banger tracks.
There's a crazy amount of songs from the Sega catalog, including many a Sonic song, like Sonic Frontiers, I think has a few numbers in there and stuff. So yeah, you can throw those in. You also each, both Japan and Hawaii have like their own podcast thing that happens. The Japan one is entirely in Japanese and not subtitled. So I was like, well, there's no point in me trying to follow along what they're talking about here. Right. But then the Hawaiian one is basically like a couple of radio DJs talking about a lot of like the Hawaiian locations that you'll see and kind of encounter, and a lot of like the Hawaiian lingo and stuff. And they'll talk about that, and kind of it's morning DJs bantering with each other, and you basically unlock nice. Like one of those episodes every few like for the first handful of chapters and stuff. Other things throughout, we get introduced to a very cool and interesting villain in the form of Yamai in this, Yataka Yamai, who basically is like running his own clan in Hawaii.
Interesting. Okay.
As an exile, like he used to be a Tojo clan member, but he killed his patriarch 20 years ago and like fled in exile and stuff like that. And when you get to like over the course of the game, you get to get his story, but he very much seems to be getting set up as like the Goro Majima to Ichiban in this. Like you have Goro and Majima and Kiryu. He's very much seems like he's going to be kind of a recurring character for Ichiban, potentially. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, he definitely kind of has those vibes in terms of like, oh, he's more than meets the eye. Like he starts out as an antagonist. A lot of people in this game start as antagonists and then eventually kind of get allied with you.
I mean, that's a classic.
As is kind of a classic.
That's a Yakuza standard.
The franchise. Like the
characters who start off as your friends end up as your enemies. Characters who start off as your enemies end up as your friends. That's a Yakuza game.
Yep, indeed. So yeah, pretty much everybody I think from the last game is back eventually over the course of the game. Like one or two come in very, very late in the game, so they don't get like a ton of story stuff to do, but it's like nice to have an extra body and extra skills to fill out your moveset. And then there are a couple new characters. In addition to obviously Kiryu kind of joining the party this time around, you get introduced to characters Tomizawa and Chitose in the Hawaii kind of sections of things, and they're great fun new additions to the team that are kind of in that similar vein of like they start out as like antagonists with Ichiban, but then eventually he wins them over as he does so many characters. I'm trying to think. The plot itself is you're basically off to Hawaii because you're searching for somebody, and that ends up getting you wrapped up into a larger thing with all of the the different gangs going on in Hawaii, and hey, maybe they have some ties to what's going on in Japan too. Some fun performances. Danny Trejo's in here as like the leader of the big gang in Hawaii, the Barracudas. He's playing a gang leader called Dwight Mendez.
Let's go.
So he pops up as kind of a recurring baddie over the course of the game and is a lot of fun.
Love Danny Trejo.
And then on the Japan side, Daniel Day Kim is playing kind of a clan captain, Ebina, who's kind of taken over one of the remaining Yakuza clans in Japan. One of the big things at the end of the last game that's also touched on in The Man Who Erased His Name is the Tojo clan and the Omi Alliance disbanded.
Right.
So they're done, but Japan has a 5-year no Yakuza clause or something like that. So anybody who was in the Yakuza when it disbanded has had a hard time finding work the last few years.
Yeah.
And so the Seiryu clan, as one of the remaining things, has kind of been gobbling up former Yakuza members, former Tojo clan, and former Omi Alliance members, and it's kind of building up strength again for maybe nefarious purposes, as you will encounter over the course of the game. And Ebbing is kind of leading the charge on that as the new person, and he's partnered with some people in Hawaii. It's having played as many Yakuza games, like you said, there are a lot of very predictable things. So it's okay, you start to realize, okay, that guy's probably going to turn on me. And then eventually, they turn on you. Or that guy's going to maybe eventually ally with you. And eventually they ally with you. So there were definitely some moments where I was like, oh, I predicted that. Cool. Called that. You'll see me call it out in some of the Let's Plays and stuff. But then there are definitely some where it's oh, that's, wild and surprising and fun. Mm-hmm. It still has, absurd Yakuza stuff all over the place. There's karaoke abound, as we talked about. Batting cages. Trying to think what other little side questy thing. I never dive into the mahjong and stuff. I did play it. I spent probably a few hours of my time playing Texas Hold'em poker and blackjack and stuff to get some chips and get a whole bunch of money and stuff like that. I'm a sucker for a poker game, which foreshadows Balatro at the end of the episode. But yeah, lots of fun. Kiryu continues to be just a charming character all around, be it sometimes very naive and clueless, and there's a lot of stuff in the early game where you're just kind of cringing through how bad Kiryu or how bad Kazuga is at navigating some of these social interactions and stuff.
Asking somebody to marry him on the first date.
Somebody to marry him on the first date. Yeah, exactly. But that ultimately has a fun payoff over the course of the game. And because it's also fun, he brings it up every now and then when Kiryu's back in Japan, he kind of meets up with and Sachan kind of joins his team over there. And so a lot of the drink link stuff with him is so what happened with you and Ichiban? Why haven't you talked to him in a year? And I get that he said some stupid things, but what's going on there? And so you get fun kind of,
there you go.
I think one of the best things this game does is it gives Kiryu a lot of people to bounce off of.
Good.
And so you don't just have loner, isolated Kiryu who's always fighting for himself or fighting for others. He has a team of people, and so he's much more open, and you get to hear him share his wisdom, his experiences with a lot of these younger characters, and still also get insight from them in terms of what maybe how he should be approaching some things as he's dealing with his mortality and all this stuff. So yeah, ton of fun. I this will easily be, I think, a top 5 game at the end of the year for me. Last Yakuza Like a Dragon would have been probably a top 5 game of that year had I played it the year it came out. I played it a few months after. And also I think it came out in 2020, so I don't think it would have beaten Final Fantasy VII Remake.
No.
We'll see how it ends up stacking against Rebirth. If Rebirth ends up, if Rebirth sticks the landing, I can very easily see that being, the front runner for me this year. But Yakuza Like a Dragon is so much fun. Such a fun time. Some weird, baffling, business decisions behind it. For the first time, New Game Plus is locked behind paid DLC, which
so weird.
I got as a part of the digital deluxe package anyway. So I've been having some fun kind of grinding up and playing, replaying and doing this stuff on a hard difficulty to tide me over until Rebirth comes out, really. But yeah, it's why was that the choice made? But yeah, so much fun. Such a great story. Wonderful cast of characters that like are just a blast to like spend time with. Oh, that's another thing. Like as you're running around the world, each character will have like little spots in the world where it's like, oh, you can like kind of trigger a walk and talk conversation with them, and you'll get to know a little bit more about that character, and they'll talk about, you know, some mundane thing or something, but that it, you know, goes towards building up their relationships and your bond with that character and stuff like that, and kind of all those stats. Cool. And you're doing those on a bingo board, so it's called Bond Bingo. And like when you get like a straight line of them, you get an extra bonus of how, and if you like fill out the board, then you get like an extra scene where you can go and like take a selfie with the character in some fun location or something like that. So, yeah, just a ton of fun. Incredible variety in terms of like the mixing and matching of jobs once they open up. Early game pacing, I will say, is probably the biggest hurdle of this game. Is it takes probably about half the game before most of the stuff is really opened up. So for those first early hours, you are just kind of locked in on a very like
linear path.
Like chapter 3 opens up a lot of sub stories, so you can start doing a whole bunch of that stuff, but you're still like, you don't open up jobs until chapter 5. Dondoko Island opens up at chapter 6. And then, yeah, like half the party doesn't really open up until after you split kind of the party into the two different kind of teams. So at that point you get a whole bunch of like, all right, well, if I spent too much time grinding, all these new characters join me at a very specific level, so they're all super under-leveled compared to where everybody else is. Like, yeah, they're at the level that the game is at right now, but now I need to grind them up to do the extra things I was doing or stuff like that. So, yeah, pacing's tough and slow going in the early, you know, 20, 30 hours of the game. That said, you could also mainline it. Like I was going and doing all the side stuff, which was padding out time, that I could have just kind of mainlined it and got to a lot of that other stuff sooner, and then done the sub stories and stuff after the fact. But lots of fun, and lots of just clever ways that even like characters from last game, like from previous games, just pop up, and like how they, you know, get introduced or get segued into the story and stuff like that. It's just a ton of fun. I had a great time with it. Definitely a must play for fans of the series. If you aren't a fan of the turn-based stuff, and like you really love the early games, this might be worth braving it just to get the Kiryu kind of closure moments, we'll say, in quotes, because there are so many like nice kind of buttons on relationships with him, despite, you know, where he may or may not go moving forward. But yeah, any questions or any last things for me?
No, you've answered everything I think I could have asked about the game.
Okay, and yeah, we've talked about it at length over the last few episodes. So cool. Yeah, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. Very great first game of the year to play. I also I did everything. I platinumed the game, so it's also where I'm coming from. The one of the trophies in the game is like level 70. It's like, if you don't do that on a New Game Plus, you are doing a lot of grinding, because I ended the game having done everything in like the mid to high 50s level wise. So I would have had to spend a lot of time fighting the like lower EXP enemies and stuff of the base game. But since I had the New Game Plus option, I just kind of started there. You'd start at that level and kind of move forward. A lot of stuff carries over into New Game Plus. And so I was able to just kind of like skip all the cutscenes and get to the dungeon and get to where I wanted to start grinding and do all that stuff. And that was the last trophy I needed. So, yeah. All right. So I'll give myself a break to do a little bit of drinking some Mountain Dew or water. So tell me, Cam, Madden 24, is this just kind of like, oh, Super Bowl's done, so you're in a football fix?
A little bit. It came on Game Pass, and I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Why not? I've been asking for them to put Madden on Game Pass for forever. And they finally did, and I played it. And I haven't played a Madden since like Madden 16, Madden 17. So like I've had a lot of gap between, and so like I don't know, like you're not going to hear me say, well, compared to last year's Madden, this mode is missing, or this mode has been included, or they've made improvements here or there. That's not what my experience is with Madden. My Madden is I pick up a Madden maybe once every 5 to 10 years. I play it quite a bit. Maybe I do an online league with some friends. Not doing that with this one. A lot of them felt like a lot of my buddies that I did like my last league with. They do a league usually annually. They're like, yeah, I heard Madden 24 is not good. And I'm like, okay, I don't know the difference, and I'm playing it for my Xbox Game Pass fee. So
yeah. I'm curious. So like last time I really got into sports games on that level was when like the PS4 launched, and some of the game, like, you know, there weren't a ton of games at launch, but I had one at launch. And so I hopped into like NBA 2K 14 and FIFA 14, I think were the two games. NBA 2K, I jumped in, I was like, I have no idea how to handle these controls. Like, this is far too complex for me. And then I eventually kind of felt the same thing when I jumped into the first WWE 2K game, you know, a number of years later. I was like, I don't know, like, this has all gotten so complicated. FIFA was a little bit more manageable. Sorry, are you like shifting over there? I'm hearing a lot of noise.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm like rubbing my hands on my gym shorts.
Yeah.
I'll stop that.
Yeah. Sorry for audio listeners.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. So with FIFA, I was like, okay, FIFA was a little bit more manageable. But even that, I was like, this is far more complicated than just like running around hitting a button to do a kick or a pass or something like that. So I'm curious if Madden's has that same kind of thing where like, oh, you haven't played Madden in 10 years, so it's a steep learning curve, versus like, oh, the few adjustments they make year over year that I need to get used to. Like, oh no, I'm learning a brand new game.
This is what I thought was actually pretty interesting. I booted up Madden for the first time, and it asked me what kind of passing style did I want. They gave me two different, very specifically, like, recent things that they've been doing with passing in the last decade. And then they put in, like, a classic Madden mode, and I picked classic Madden mode. So it's just, I hit X to safety to pop it back to me as the quarterback. If it's a run, my running back picks the ball up for me. I have button prompts pop up. They're grayed out until like you actually have like some decent like opportunity for them to possibly catch it. Like they've made it through their route. They weren't blocked. And then you do that, and if you want, you can do some special throws if you want, by just holding down the button longer or tapping it really quickly. That is like the biggest differentiator. If you just tap it normally, it's just a normal pass. And it is it's not like a game changer. That was how it was at the last one that I played. So it's classic Madden, works great. It is what it is. Like the new teams the new team averages and everything out like that.
You playing as the Jets?
Most of the time, yeah, I'm playing as the Jets. Let me rephrase that. I started career mode where I got to be the quarterback. I'm the new quarterback of the Jets, which is what the Jets always need, is a good quarterback, and they never seem to get one. There's other things we could improve on as well, but the quarterback is usually like where like the big talk is. We always say that we want to get rid of our current one. We'll bring in somebody else, and then that person will like get injured, and then we go back to the one we don't like. Happens every season. Jets, for people who don't know, stands for Just Endure the Suffering. It's like, I didn't choose to be a Jets fan. I inherited being a Jets fan. Nobody chooses to be a Jets fan.
I mean, by sticking with them, you've made a choice. You can pull that, like, I've inherited this crap all you want. You've never lived in New York. You could have chosen any other team.
No. It's in my blood. It's in my DNA.
I mean, that's not how life works. This is not like a predestination kind of thing. The team that you are born into is always the team you must support. You know,
as somebody who lives in Arizona, maybe I could have supported the Cardinals at some point.
No, don't do that. Yeah. that would have been just as bad.
Cardinals have actually been to like a Super Bowl in the last 20 years.
Yeah, a couple, I think.
No, just the one.
Was it just the one?
Just the one.
Okay.
They made it to the playoffs multiple times, which is more the Jets can say.
Yeah. I do remember, I guess, the one time that it happened. I thought it happened like once during the pandemic or something like that. But
no, can't be right.
I remember the time they did make it was like, oh, they made it to the Super Bowl with like they made a record for like the worst record to ever make it to the Super Bowl.
Yes,
the worst win-loss record. I was like,
yes,
way to go, Cardinals.
Yep, and not only that, but they also had one of the worst performances in any Super Bowl ever. It was bad,
sure,
which is not surprising. Just anyway. Yeah, like I could be a Cardinals fan, I guess, but no, why would I do that? Why would I put myself through that? Like, as a kid, I was a big Brett Favre fan. And then we can see how that turned out for me.
Mm-hmm.
What's funny is he got traded to the Jets, and that's what kind of like, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to like actually like be like invest myself in the Jets now. He played for a season and then left, and I just stayed with the Jets. Otherwise, like I was more of like, I've always been more of a player fan than I have been a like sports franchise fan until like I got into like my late teens. I got tired of the Suns just being a garbagely run organization.
Sure. Real quick, you were correct. Only 2009 is the only time Cardinals have made it to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like that's for me growing up in Arizona. It's one of the reasons I just don't care about sports is because like. I loved the Suns for a couple years when I was really into basketball, and one of those years they made it to the playoffs and the finals against the Bulls, and then they lost to the Bulls. When I was in high school, the Diamondbacks made it to and won the World Series, so that was neat. 4 years into the franchise or whatever. But it was also 2001, the year everybody wanted New York to win for obvious reasons. So like, well, we suddenly became the heels of the league.
Yep.
But even then, like I didn't follow baseball. Because baseball's always bored the crap out of me. And then, just growing up as a Cardinals, growing up in Arizona, like, shout out to my sister and brother-in-law and my parents who, like, when football season is going on, we tend to not have, like, family lunches on Sundays or anything because the games are going on and they continue to watch and root for the Cardinals.
God help them.
Despite everything, but yeah.
I mean,
anyway, we don't need to dive more into football. Tell me about Madden.
Madden. Madden, it's good. Like, it's good. It's solid. It is a football simulator game that I can play. I will say I ran into some server issues, so I couldn't play like my career mode that I wanted to play because it's server linked only, which is not surprising because it's EA. And EA can just like bite me.
But it's like, I mean, a career mode I would expect to be like a single player offline even. Yeah,
you would, Trevor. You would, which made me have a lot of confusion about what the hell was going on. I have to be linked up to the servers to access my career mode. Like, that's basically like the biggest issue I have with it is the fact like EA continues to do their you have to be online to access modes that should be single player. And continues to just be garbage overall.
They want to be directly feeding you the ads that they're selling into the game and stuff.
Pretty much there's that, but there's also like there is like the like live, like on their servers, they do have like up-to-date stats,
rankings and stats
and stuff for their like different modes. Like, but I'm not playing those modes that those matter in. I'm trying to be Cam Madden, quarterback for the Jets, and I'm just trying to throw some footballs and win some games. And I delivered in my first game ever. It was like 64 points to 0. Like, I absolutely wrecked shop with the Jets. And I'm just like, this is the way obviously
it can be done.
It can be done.
In a computer simulation that probably is, set to very, very easy for a first game of a career mode, but
probably.
It can happen.
But guess what? That shouldn't, it was one thing where it's like, even if we had a good team, we were playing up against like the Golden Age Patriots, like the dynasty era of the Patriots. And so like we were in the same division as them. And so we were always getting shut out anyway. That being said, like, we on paper, we have a solid team. Doesn't match our record. Any Jets fan will tell you that. Like, it's painful. It's painful being a Jets fan. And until you become numb to it, and then you just accept it that, yes, this is the time of year where I look at scoreboards and I look at like results of games and I feel sad.
So you see, we've veered back down into the black hole of jets and away from the game.
The game itself, right? The game itself is solid.
Okay.
That's it. Like, there's not much to talk about Madden without just talking about sports. And like the fact that the server access you need for, because also you can play exhibition games, and as you win more with the team that you like to play with, they get better. Mm-hmm. Kind of like as a like not an AI creep, but kind of like just like a general, like you get better, they get better as you get better at playing Madden. It's kind of like their whole thing with that, which I thought was cool until I couldn't access it because I'm not like the servers were down or something. Mm-hmm. And it's just, or it was like my VPN was messing with it. And guess what? I'm not turning my VPN off for Madden. Like eat shit. I'm not doing that.
All right.
So yeah, overall, like Madden's never been like oh, this year's Madden's going to be incredible. Like it's always just like somebody took the different switches like on a mix board and made some things better and some things worse. And it's still just Madden.
Okay. Yeah, it is one of those, like, I always like chuckle when people are like, oh my God, like who the hell's buying these games? Millions of people are buying that game every year.
Yeah.
Like it's like that and your Call of Duties are constantly at the top of what used to be the NPD. I don't know what they're renamed now, but like the games charts at the end of the year, it was always like, yeah, the sports games do really well because the people who buy the sports games buy that game, and that's really the only thing they care about. Them and the Call of Duties, or maybe they do kind of, those are the two games they play a year, and they're not diving into the Like a Dragon Infinite Wealths and the other things and all that.
I kind of see it as a even if you take like a Madden person or like a sports game person and they're like, no, but I'm a real gamer. They're playing like those big tentpole games. They're playing God of War, The Last of Us type stuff on PlayStation.
Maybe. I mean, I've met people that only play
for sure, yes,
the sports game, that they like.
Yeah, the sports game is like, they're like, oh, a lot of the people I know are talking about this other game though, and I'll check it. Maybe I'll check that out. And like, but those are the only games they'll play. Mm-hmm. So you get like that kind of like Venn diagram of sometimes they'll play tentpole games, but a lot of times they don't. It's their Madden machine, it's their FIFA machine, it's their
or they were like, oh, they're making a Hogwarts game. All right, yeah, I'll jump into that last year too.
Yep,
since
that's pretty much
sold like gangbusters, despite outcry and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about it is like people who are inside or like who care about the industry, follow the industry, didn't play that game. But how many millions upon millions of people don't follow the industry and just saw a Harry Potter game?
Yeah, exactly. We're the weird niche.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Then let's throw it over to our Final Fantasy block. And I'll let you kind of...
I don't have much game-wise this week because I was catching up on Echo for that D+ show, but yeah.
Sure. Final Fantasy Rebirth released the second part of their demo, the Junin kind of open world area bit, to give a taste, a flavor of that. It was smaller than I was expecting it to be, but also I understand a week out from the game. They're not going to, tip all their hand and all that stuff. And then also we went and saw Advent Children. So I'll let you kind of drive what you want to talk about first in that
let's talk about the demo first. Sure. Give me this goddamn game already. Give me this goddamn game already. I fucking want to play it so goddamn badly.
I was so happy that I got the notification yesterday that my order has shipped. So hopefully will arrive Thursday and not late.
I want to play it so badly. I'm just waiting for the preload to start for it so I can just have it ready to go. Mm-hmm. I am going to be spending this week at work working extremely hard to try to finish as much work as possible so that I can like be sick or go take like some PTO to play this game. I don't want to go to work and I just want to wake up, play this game, go to bed.
Meanwhile, I planned ahead and just took off.
You already took
Friday, Monday, and Tuesday.
Well,
PTO.
You also don't have project. I have to finish my project.
I've just planned my workload around those projects. And this game.
I didn't. I didn't think about it.
I had this request off since like early January. I was like, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth comes out the 29th.
We both know where my mind was at December and January. Yeah. So my mind was not on like, oh, I should take some time off to play this game. It was not in a better place.
Yeah.
That being said, no, I just want to play it so badly. I loved everything that I got to play with it. Every system that they introduced, I'm super in love with. Whether it's the Chocobo system, the like rest stop system, where you have to like you activate them now, and it has like the little chocobo with the acorn on his butt.
Yep.
I don't know what that's about.
The nut butt.
The nut butt.
It's the. I mean, like from the. It's like the Kupo nuts.
Yeah, the Kupo nut
stuff like that.
Yeah, the Kupo nut. The Kupo nut is on his
and stuff.
Yeah. The Kupo nut is on the chocobo's butt, and it's adorable as all hell. And also, you get to pet the nut butt chocobo.
I mean, maybe they just hatch out of it, and that's, you know, they're so early that they just kind of keep part of that shell with them. I don't know.
Man, that's wild actually to think about. Like, it does make sense now why chocobos and Moogles are so intertwined.
Sure. Yes, they're very cute.
Yeah.
You can pet them.
Super cute. God damn, it's so cute. And you pet the butt the nut butt chocobo, and you activate the things, and you get like points that you can put towards costumes for your chocobo, and those are awesome as hell.
Yeah, I was listening to a review. It sounds like in the open world stuff, they're cosmetic. It sounds like they might actually have like tangible effects in the chocobo racing mini games and
Hells
stuff.
To the yes.
When you get to eventually Gold Saucer, you
can
swap in
to the yes.
So
I guess you already have it unlocked as the Scorpion armor for it. I don't know if that's for everybody, but
I imagine that was just the demo.
Yeah. I had that. I customized the colors on it, so it was like teal and badass, and I loved it. Yeah, no, it was awesome. It was super awesome getting to like run around on chocobos in this very confined area, to be honest. Yeah, combat is better than it's ever been. Like we talked about with the first part of the demo that came out, the improvements to combat continue to be overwhelmingly awesome. I felt one of the things I really thought was really cool was the way that the boss fight, you had to have like some actual like boss arena strategy for some of the stuff, because some of the stuff that could happen it wasn't just a hack and slash until a different part of the fight and like dodge to avoid damage. It was like actual strategy. Things were actually happening during the fight that need to kind of like switch stuff up on the fly.
Yeah, they had that. I always think to like Reno, where he would like trap you in a pyramid. It had that kind of mechanic where like one of your party members can get trapped in a bubble and you have to attack the bubble to free them. Stuff like that.
There was that. It was like there was parts where it's like, wow, I really want Barrett in my party.
Yeah.
Because there are some enemies where it's just like they just get away from you. And like the best way to interrupt their stuff is to be Barrett and just have them, blow their heads off with this massive machine gun.
Yeah, there was a lot of that in this part of the demo. Like a lot of flying enemies where I was like, okay, running around, as much as I would love to run around with Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith as my party, that's just not compatible with what I actually need here in combat. So swapping in Barrett.
Different enemy types different enemy types really demanding that sort of swap with your party felt good in a way, because I was like, okay, they're really stressing like you do need to change up your party. Everybody's walking together, just switch it up. And I think that the changes to skills and combos in the way that the like keeping the same way with the kind of the ATB bar active time battle bar being like a charge up for maneuvers, otherwise you can only just attack, dodge, and defend. That felt I felt very restricted at certain points of it, because I felt that my AI party members were not like up to snuff.
They weren't leveling up, or they weren't their bar wasn't moving up nearly as quick as I wanted them to be.
Yeah, that was my problem, because I was like, oh, I'm out of I'm out of I'm out of my ATB bar. I'll switch over to somebody else, and it's like, oh, they don't have any bar. Yeah. Or they have like a third of a bar, and I'm like, I really don't like this. I think that this is like not something I care for. And it kind of annoys me that, but at the same time, I'm like, I know it's because as soon as they get half like one of the bars, they're throwing out a special ability. But I would really appreciate it, Aerith, if one of those special abilities was one of your healing ones. You healed me, or you healed yourself, more importantly, because you keep on almost dying.
I don't think they automatically will fire off an ability.
They won't? Then why the hell is it always so low?
I mean, because they're not, if you're not using them, they're not building up nearly as quick as you are when you're actively swinging your sword or whatever. So yeah,
I guess it makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying is like I was constantly kind of switching between my characters, and I would fire off a few shots with Aerith, so I'd get her up to at least one bar. So if I needed heals when the time came, I could switch to her and use pray or use the cure ability or something like that.
Yep. Didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Did not think about that. But I do know the first time I fought the boss, I beat the boss both times, but I had a really hard time with the boss the first time because I did not have anybody ranged.
I mean, I'll say it, like I hopped in initially, started doing some of the stuff. I was trying to do some of like the challenges around there and was like, God, I am not doing well just being dropped into this combat and with all these new systems and mechanics and stuff. So I ended up kind of restarting and dropping just to easy difficulty just to like enjoy it and get through it. And I continued on there. I think like I'm going to play normal kind of when the game normally comes out. And I fucking loved hard mode of the first game. I think that was the best way to play the first game. Or remake rather. Because it turned everything into much more strategic and you had to be very methodic in how you were kind of using your resources. Whereas like if you do a little bit of grinding, it can be very easy to quickly kind of out level everything. I know that this game is going to have like a dynamic leveling system as an option. So you can kind of have the enemies level up with you if you don't want to just kind of like completely, grind, do all the side stuff, and then suddenly you're 10 levels above everything else and you're wiping the floor with them all.
I think that's also one of the reasons why the boss arenas seem to be like they're going to be a bit more about strategy rather than just be damage sponges.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that's very good. I like that they are bringing back that approach. They kind of like definitely like threw themselves in the water on that in remake with several of the bosses, although some of the other bosses just ended up being kind of like special bosses, like special maneuvers that bosses would do, but otherwise would just be, damage sponges.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the idea that we saw of, because even like some of the area bosses for like the what's his name? Chadley. Yeah, that's it. Chadley. Some of his like tougher encounters in the VR stuff, I felt like, oh, I need to interrupt this because otherwise it's going to really hurt my party.
Mm-hmm.
And it bred a certain sort of, even though these are not quote unquote bosses, the more challenging encounters really also demanding that out of you, I felt was like really cool and a really great way of being like, hey, pay attention to the game. If you want, you can play it on easy and burn through everything, no problem.
Yeah. One of the combat encounters in this demo was like I like that those little Chadley things that they're, sending you out on, like the demo has like 4 combat encounter things that you can do. And like each one has like, here are 3 challenges to do as part of this fight if you can. And I liked it. One of them was like, okay, this enemy is going to use this ability, try and interrupt it so they don't heal themselves or whatever. And if you don't do it, they heal themselves, but you can still, take them out and finish the fight or whatever. You just don't get that like checkbox on the like completion and you don't get full points for the thing. You can always like retry the encounter and just focus on doing that next time, which I did. So I was like, okay, I'm going to stock up lightning or whatever I need so that when they do attack or when they do start to do that, I'm going to have somebody just interrupt them and down them and whatever. So like it led to strategic approaches to just the general stuff. I think based on what I saw in that framework, they've kind of taken a lot of that stuff that was maybe more reserved to bosses in the last game, and they've thrown a lot more of that into just your standard fights. There is going to be more strategy into the best way to take out even just the basic enemies. Like, yeah, you can just kind of hack and slash through them, but if you know that using this particular maneuver, this particular like elemental type will really, pressure them and stagger them quicker.
Yes.
You're going to have a much easier time if you just kind of focus on that to knock them out and take them out.
Emphasizing pressure and stagger on regular enemies has become a really big focus of the battle system. And that's something that I just really like about it. Mm-hmm. Overall, I think it answered like one of the questions, like when you asked me, hey, cause I was like, oh, that's how they're doing it. And you asked me like, oh, what is that? I was like, but it's how they decided to introduce Yuffie, which I thought was really smart. Just like have her be part of like you encounter a boss and then Yuffie is part of that encounter as somebody who just gets caught up with it. Or rather you save, like you're helping save her. And it becomes a way of introducing her to the party. That's not just running into a random enemy in the forest.
Yeah.
I found that to be a very cool idea on how to bring in a character like that, that otherwise was a bonus character in the originals, the original game.
Yeah. This being a segment that takes place, obviously, you've just come out of the Mithril Mines and you're heading over to Junon proper. It is like a small slice of that area. There were definitely things around that area where it was like, I feel like this is going to have some sort of side quest thing related to it. There are too many consoles with red lights on.
Yeah.
that were begging for there to be a triangle icon above them that was not there.
Also, like half the map you didn't have access to.
Yeah.
So that's
I believe there are like 5 or 6 regions in the game, and so that open world section is only going to be one of those regions.
Well, you only got like half of that region because the other half of the region was like quote unquote under construction.
Yeah, there was like you can't go further in this demo over this way. Yeah. I imagine that's like the Fort Condor stuff and whatever.
That's what it sounded like because they also had like
kind of reference it.
Yeah, they reference it saying like there's no way of knowing how to get to it right now.
A giant bird comes and takes somebody away right at the beginning of the demo, and they're like, "Where do you think that came from?" "Oh, I heard there's a nest on an old reactor." I'm like, "Oh, cool." But yeah, a lot of fun. Continues to be beautiful. I didn't play around too much with the synergy attacks, and I think largely that's coming from I felt like I didn't have a say in how they were added or whatever they were in there, and I just don't know enough about them yet, having not been naturally introduced to them in the game. So I didn't really do a ton with them, and also I feel like
they have a different way, a different system.
Yeah, of they're unlocking on a different wavelength than the ATB. So also just during a normal, I'm fighting 3 orcs combat, I'm not doing enough to trigger them. So I didn't really play around with them too much until maybe the boss fight or something like that.
I figured out that if I just had in some of the tougher fights where you had the challenges and stuff, I found that they were a great asset because eventually, I don't know what happened, but eventually I was able to unlock them and use them. And they're all really, really cool. And I like them a lot.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to getting to play as Red 13. Red 13's a lot of fun. I love his savage mode because he is able to heal himself with that. But also because it changes up his attack style where he just does like a lot of cool flips and shit. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. And getting to play as Red 13, one of my before Vincent Valentine, Red 13 was my favorite character. Like before I learned about the existence of this badass monster man, sexy monster man. Before that, it was all about Nanaki, all about Red 13. Just because he was awesome as hell. Yeah. You have this dog man or a not man, but just a canine.
That's interesting. I don't know if you saw Jess, our friend Jess.
Yeah, she did. She did a poll about canine or feline.
Yeah, are they canine or feline? I've always viewed them as canine, and I think, but I can also very easily see feline qualities. But I think my view of them as canine probably comes from the fact that you already have a cat in the party, or you also have a cat in the party with Kate Sith or Ketchi or whatever, however they're pronounced. I just always saw him as a dog.
For me, I remember the artwork,
and also he howls at the moon. He howls very, at the moon. Very notably in the game. And stuff.
Another thing also is if you notice any of the art, he has canine paws.
I mean, sure, but I'd also argue they could very easily be lion paws, or I can see both. It was the kind of thing I almost responded to Jess and was like, maybe it's more of a non-binary thing, because I think they have bits of both, perhaps. But yeah. Anyway, side note.
Another part is how's at the moon.
Yeah,
that's a big one for me.
I think somebody in the game kind of says hey, can I pet your dog or whatever?
Yeah. Another thing too, I guess actually this is also something that should be probably pointed out even more so. Canine also because of the snout. The snout is a lot of people are oh, but it's not a wolf snout. It's there's a difference between canine and lupine.
Again, I think there are arguments in both camps of it could be so we don't need to go super far down this rabbit hole, because I'm with you. I always think canine, but I see the arguments to be made for why they are more feline.
I just don't see feline in him whatsoever.
Maybe the game will answer it once and for all. Because I even looked it up after Jess posted. I was like, is there a definitive answer? And like, it is very like they've very specifically been like, oh, sometimes it's like they're referred to like this, and other times they're referred to like this. They have qualities of both. But anyway, they are just the Nanaki, or that kind of race. It is like Red 13 species or something like that. It's defined in like wikis and whatnot.
Beast is another, like, also just called a beast.
Sure. I know they've kind of touted the fact that they've recorded dialogue for a lot of like the side stuff, so that like they'll refer to him either as Nanaki or as Red 13, depending on if you've like done his main stuff to like reveal him as Nanaki yet. So I'm curious if you're gonna just kind of like mainline do that, so then you can go back and do as much as you can with him as Nanaki instead of Red 13.
Maybe. I honestly, the choice of like how Red 13 chooses to be identified, Nanaki feels very much like the family name for him. Mm-hmm. It is like you find out about his name being Nanaki when you get to Cosmo Canyon.
Yeah.
And that is just kind of a thing. I felt like Red 13 is the name he tells you to like he was the 13, he's Red 13, being kind of like the name to give for that. But I do think it is also like his true name. Because of course, for everybody who doesn't know, Red 13 has a lot of like Native American aspects to his character design. Mm-hmm. I looked it up on the wiki, and Nanaki is a quadrupedal animal.
Yes.
So that is how they define him. He is an animal or beast, not canine or feline. Yep. They are being very obscure about that.
Yep.
Intentionally so, I feel.
Yeah. Anyway, any other things in the demo you want to shout out?
No, I think the demo's pretty straightforward. I thought it was really cool getting to go to Under Junon, and kind of like seeing that be quite different from, or rather not different, but rather seeing it realized, I think, in 3D for the first time. Because I don't think even in like any sort of like
it's
material, like outside of artwork, we've ever seen it anything other than it's like very rough polygonal.
Singular screen kind of thing.
Yeah. So getting to see that is pretty dang cool. It feels more like an actual like small town now rather than just like a bar.
Yeah. Real quick, I think it'll be interesting to see, because obviously the game cuts off like after the boss fight.
Yeah.
But where that demo cuts off, Yuffie had been like basically washed ashore by the enemy, and so I'm curious if she's going to be the like CPR recipient instead of the little girl from the that we also see in the demo, and we also get the dolphin
being awesome. Hells yeah.
So I'll be curious to see kind of what that moment just after this demo looks like, in terms of Yuffie's introduction to the rest of the events. But yes, only a few more days, then we can enjoy to our heart's content. You'll be in here, I'll be in my room, and we'll just kind of like be isolated for a good few days, just burning through this game as much as we can. So moving on to Advent Children, anything you wanted to say on that? We went and saw it. It dubbed on Wednesday at the Fathom events or whatever it was.
Yeah, Fathom events.
It was fun seeing like so many of our other friends or other people in the industry and stuff like also at screenings that night. Mm-hmm.
Also fun finding out that somebody we know, a friend of mine, worked on that trailer that cut the trailer that they had going on before it.
Who's that?
Sean.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep. AV Youth Sean.
Gotcha.
Another I'm trying to remember what their podcast crew was called with like Big Nick and
I don't remember. It's been so long.
Yeah.
That's a pre-pandemic thing
that is a very pre-pandemic thing.
Has escaped my mind.
Yeah, Sean works for Square Enix now, and like if you follow him on Instagram, on either of his Instagrams, he's like going to Japan all the time.
Nice.
Having a good life. He's a really, really awesome dude. He ran into some like employment stuff after kind of like the big blow up at Team Liquid back in the day, when Team Liquid like pulled out of League of Legends. He worked at like 100 Thieves before 100 Thieves like kind of like cut back their like content staff. He's a really brilliant editor and like video producer.
I'm just curious what part of your brain thinks like, I'm going to go down this path to tell you about this when we're talking about Advent Children.
Yeah, sorry. Well, he cut the trailer for
it. No, I get that. I just don't need his like back life story kind of thing. Of like, here's what he's been up to in the last 5 years.
Yeah, no, just talking. He's a really great guy. But yeah, overall, I think that especially
I did like that the trailer, the little kind of Q&A stuff beforehand confirmed the like theories and stuff that the three whispers you fight at the end are Kadaj and them from Advent Children, or variations of them. That was a fun confirmation / epiphany.
Give me 1 second. I want to make sure I pronounce this correctly. Yazoo. This time watching it as an adult, I have now realized the only competent member of the Remnants is Yazoo.
Which one's he?
He is the
punching one?
No, he is the shooter one.
Okay.
Who is somehow like the most level-headed out of them. Does like rarely fails in his objectives. He's the most put together one. He's the only one that doesn't like make a serious error in like any of their plots. He's the one, like, he's in charge of kidnapping all the children. He successfully kidnaps all the children. He is in charge of like doing this. He successfully does this. He's the only one that doesn't have like a temper tantrum at any point during the movie. And I'm like, okay, maybe there should have just been 2 remnants and Sephiroth should have split Yazoo between the other 2. But he's also like the most competent, well, like absolutely the most competent one, and probably should have been in charge. That's what this time watching it confirmed to me. That's a thing I noted watching. I was like, does Yazoo ever fail?
How long has it been since you watched Advent Children?
I haven't seen Advent Children since like the complete version came out after Crisis Core.
Okay. Because I watched it a couple years back when the I think it might have been in the lead up to Rebirth even, or remake rather. Whenever it was, I guess it might have been when Crisis Core Reunion came out. But whenever they released like the 4K Blu-ray recently, I picked that up and rewatched it.
There you go.
So
yeah,
this was all very fresh in my mind.
Yeah, not very fresh in my mind. It's been like a number of years since the PSP was the system to play. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they added all this stuff with Zack into it from Crisis Core related stuff. But for me, I've always had a soft spot in my heart for this movie, but like I can objectively say it's not a good movie.
Oh yeah, no, it's bad.
It's a bad
like
movie.
there were multiple times. Shout out to like the theater we were with. Shout out to like the Tifa cosplayer who was in our row that I saw walk past. But yeah, there were multiple times where like something happened and we just all laughed at the movie.
Yep.
Not with the movie. We were laughing at the movie in terms of like somebody's line delivery or something like that.
Yeah. Also, another thing is like dubbing has evolved so much since Advent Children.
I mean, like there's also a huge element of like the new games look better than Advent Children.
Yeah.
Which is like cool and surreal and breathtaking and stuff. But
it's also
like,
crazy to think Advent Children was this far ahead as far as 3D goes.
Sure.
For CGI animation. Because this movie literally came out in the aughts.
Yeah.
I think that overall for me, I found that it was great to kind of revisit this era of the Final Fantasy universe. Advent Children is like one of the last kind of like pieces of the, like it's part of what was called the compilation of Final Fantasy VII back in the day. It's the second to last like chronological piece of the story for Final Fantasy VII and its characters. The only one that happens afterwards is Dirge of Cerberus.
Does that happen after this?
Yep, Dirge of Cerberus happens post Advent Children.
I played and have Dirge of Cerberus. I just never got too far into it because I wasn't much of a shooter on the PS2 era.
Yeah, that's fair. It's also just like not good.
Not good. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if they ever remade it, like there's great ways you could remake that game to make it stellar. Mm-hmm. But like the way the way that it's done as far as like a shooter goes, like it's before cover mechanics were a thing, and it's not a fast enough paced shooter for it to like really matter much. Also, it's like really hard. Yeah, I really, so Dirge of Cerberus is the last thing that happens chronologically. So Advent Children getting...
Surprised they haven't re-released it as like a PS2 on PS4 Classic or something.
Which is
like
one
that.
of the reasons why I think maybe they might be remaking it in my heart.
Fair.
In my heart, that's what I keep. That's the fire I keep lit in my heart.
I don't think they have the champions that like even Crisis Core had.
I mean, that's fair. Crisis Core was a good game when it came out. Yeah. So... that's
I think they might just be content to be like, all right, we're going to pick and choose the things we like from Dirge of Cerberus and just fold them into the remake trilogy like they have been.
They've basically been doing that. Dirge of Cerberus, as far as story wise goes, I've always been I've always thought like a Turk game starring Vincent during his Turk days would have been a really cool thing. Mm-hmm. The tutorial you get in Dirge of Cerberus with Vincent is like he's in his Turk suit and he's awesome looking. And he's sick as hell. I would love to play a game where you play as like a Turk. Cause they never put out the mobile game over here, the aughts mobile game on flip phones.
Sure.
Overall, like looking back at it, like there's a lot of cool story stuff, especially regarding like the relationships between Hojo, Lucretia and Gast and like a lot of the other like...
Oh, you're talking Dirge of Cerberus.
Yeah, Dirge of Cerberus. Like there's a lot of stuff about like the people who came even before Sephiroth and whatnot that has some like interesting story stuff to it and like relationships. That being said, I'm really hoping that they kind of pull that more into Rebirth.
Yeah.
Especially since like we're getting Vincent, we're getting like granted. There's nothing like we'll talk about when the game comes out and we play it and we can make a proper commentary about it. But in regards to this in regards to Advent Children, I like kind of like where characters ended up after Final Fantasy VII. I love that they all wear a piece of Aerith's ribbon.
Yeah.
The fact that even that it's tied to Cloud keeps it on his Geostigma infected arm, mm-hmm. even. That it's there's so much about like keeping people in like people being memories.
Yeah.
Sephiroth says, "I won't remain just a memory." Aerith and Zack being content to be positive memories, and like this being like about Cloud overcoming kind of like his massive survivor's guilt, overcoming the like the trauma of being like overdosed with Mako, and then like adapting and absorbing things from Zack. Like there's a lot about and like forgetting Zack even existed, and like the guilt that goes with that for how many years he forgot his one of his best friends. And was all but impersonating him. It's like there's a lot of stuff about Cloud's progress as he saved the world, but he didn't save himself. And this is really the story about how Cloud kind of saves himself.
Yeah, this is always the thing I point back to is like this is what made Cloud super mopey, and like this defined what Cloud would become. Because Cloud in the first game, I think in the original Final Fantasy VII, is more snarky and more sarcastic and fun, I think. And in this, he's just always down, and that just ends up becoming, he's always down in Crisis Core too, and he's always like any other time we've seen him is just like sad or angry or mopey Cloud. I don't like that. That is like this thing's legacy on the series. But
for me, I didn't think that as much as it was a matter of Cloud is very snarky and also a lot of times it's because of like player prompt. For like a lot of the snarky asshole-ish things you can say are like prompted by other players, and there's always options to like not say anything. Which is I think if you like played it where it's like you don't have Cloud talk very much, maybe you do have a bit. Maybe it comes off a bit more mopey. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. The highlight of remake in terms of Cloud for me will always be the like, yes, nailed it, moving on.
100%. Yes.
In the cross-dressing section of the game. And I hear he's got a lot more of those kinds of beats and moments in Rebirth. So
yep, I'm excited for it. But when it comes to Advent Children, I think that it's also like there's a lot of like. Yeah, they saved the world, but the world was also like already fucked up before Sephiroth was trying to destroy it. And just because they beat Sephiroth doesn't mean like the world's still not fucked up. Like it's still a cyberpunk kind of dystopian world.
Yeah.
And now everybody's kind of dealing with the aftermath. You have like the mass evacuation of Midgar. You have the fact that like the edge of Midgar has now become like a city. You have like the city of the ancients became like a base for the Sephiroth remnants, which feels like, and then like when you see Kadaj like black in the pool, it feels really fucked up.
Yeah, it's like adding insult to injury.
Yeah, it's like, man, that's such a like it's good shit. There's a lot of like really great, cool things that happen as kind of like what happens afterwards that Nomura and the team had to kind of like put together afterwards. After the original director Kitase like was done with it, because Kitase's original ending is supposed to be like 100 years after the events of FF7. Final Fantasy VII's final cutscene is supposed to be that, because it shows like Midgar being green again, and we get an awesome homage.
It's 500 years later, yeah.
500 years later, we get an amazing homage to that though, because we get to see Nanaki with his kids still, run up, and we see kind of that opening, that final shot of Final Fantasy VII. We get to see that again, but this time it's just, oh no, it's only been like a couple years. It's only been like 2 years.
No, it's still 500 years later.
No. The shot we get at the opening of Advent Children.
That's what I'm saying, is it says like 500 years in the future or something.
Does it? I thought, because it wasn't green, it shows like Midgar still like beat green up, doesn't it?
No, it's yeah, the opening is like, we get, there's shots of like the Buster Sword at that and the desert of Midgar when like we go out and find Cloud for the first time. But yeah, the Nanaki stuff at the beginning is basically a revised, better version of the final scene from the original episode.
I don't recall seeing
and
that.
I think it starts with that, and it's like 500 years earlier or something like that.
Okay, maybe I'm just like misremembering it, even though we saw it just on Wednesday.
Yeah,
that's fine. It was a very like, there's a lot of things that happened in that movie.
Yeah, but it is very much like, yeah, in that future, the town is, or the city is very overgrown, and Midgar has basically been taken back, reclaimed, kind of thing.
Yep. I just, there's a lot about Advent Children that I enjoy still, but it like overall, like it's not going to be a movie that I say people need to watch it because it's great. It's not. If you're a Final Fantasy VII fan, you've already watched it. So.
I think there's some fun action in there. Especially I think the a lot of the fight stuff is just solid. The Tifa and I don't remember which remnant it is that she fights, but that in the church is a good sequence. The motorcycle stuff still really works for me, and then the big fight against Bahamut, or whatever that version of Bahamut is at the end, I think is always a ton of fun.
Bahamut Sin.
There you go. Because I'm a sucker for that moment where everybody helps Cloud along to like fly into the air.
It's anime as shit.
It is absolutely anime as shit, yeah. And they talk about it in that like pre-interview kind of thing of like, with the game, you're locked to the things that the player can do, and you have to stay on the ground and all that stuff. And when we made this movie, we were like, oh, we can have them fly around the air and jump crazily and stuff like that. I was like, cool. Make them just shonen jump, quite literally, kind of thing.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm always a sucker for the little pop-ups of Aerith and Zack in this. But yeah, it's like the kid that they help out is just bad. And I don't know if it's just the dub version is bad, or if it's just that like they just wrote a kid very badly. Like Marlene's fine, but the other kid is just terrible.
I think it's just I just think the character itself is not stellar.
Yeah. And
just the overall performance is also not great.
Yeah.
Also, like old school dubbing, they keep way too close to like the original script as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than just like taking the ideas and motifs and then just westernizing it. So there's a lot of like stilted, weird phrasing.
Yeah.
That is trying to like match trying to match the dubbing of the kid's mouth. And it's not great.
Yeah.
Also, dilly dally shilly shally.
Yep. Still bad. Always been bad. But it's like, I remember being like, why is this thing in here? And then finding out online, it's like, oh, well, the phrase being used is like you're taking too long. But that did like what that phrase is supposed to mean is supposed to be a bit more like a child phrase. Mm-hmm.
And so they decided to use dilly dally shilly shally. And you know what?
I mean, the dilly dally part
works.
Gets that across.
Makes
That's
it across.
fine. It's the shilly shally that I'm like, what the
hell is shilly shally? Like, what the fuck is shilly shally?
Yeah.
I'll never understand. And also it's why I personally feel like it's okay that we've moved away from like being so close to the original Japanese scripts.
Sure. Any final Advent Children thoughts before we move on then to the last topic?
You know, my last thoughts about Advent Children are that I think it's certainly a product of its time. But also I think it's a great love letter to the characters of Final Fantasy VII.
I think it's an interesting epilogue.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
I think it's a great epilogue to, like, because you didn't get an original epilogue in the original game after the final fight. So this is kind of the epilogue.
The epilogue you got was 500 years later. Yeah. And it's like, well, what happened between?
Yeah. What happens to to the main characters? Also, like, why was Yuffie and Vincent not in that final cutscene? And like all other sorts of questions that they end up answering the compilation stuff. And Advent Children is just a great touch of it.
I mean, they're not in that cutscene because they only made one version of that cutscene and didn't want to have to factor in which of those characters you unlocked over the course of the game.
Yep, but then they announced in Dirge of Cerberus during that last fight that they sent Yuffie and Vincent to evacuate Midgar.
Except you can have them there with you in that fight.
Trevor, I know, but canonically they're not in the last part of that fight.
Sure, okay.
When everybody gets on the high, like they take the high wind and they evacuate Midgar. That's the official story.
Yeah. Anyway.
And Vincent sees Hojo's body and pulls a gun on it because he wants to put bullets in it, but then decides not to, and he should have. And we find out later why in Dirge of Cerberus.
There you go.
Good shit.
All right. Then lastly, a late edition, Balatro. I've been seeing people kind of go crazy about this game all week.
Tell me what the hell this game is.
So this is effective. I mean, it bills itself as a poker roguelike. And I'm like, isn't any game of poker roguelike? It is Vampire Survivors poker.
Oh, shit.
It is. Yeah, you are. And I will. The first thing I'm going to say up front, if you have PlayStation Plus, I don't know what level, but there is like a 1 hour game trial for this game on PlayStation.
Fuck.
So I hopped in there and played it and was like, yep, I'm addicted. So I'm going to drop the $15 for it and play it there. It's also on Steam and Xbox. I think it's pretty much everywhere. But
is it 5-card stud or Texas Hold'em?
It is. So there are modifiers through the wazoo, but the base game, kind of what you're introduced to, is you have a normal deck of 52 cards. You draw 8 cards at a time, and you can use up to 5 of those cards to make a hand, or you can discard up to 5 cards and draw 5 new cards, or up to 5, however many new cards.
Whoa! Okay, wow.
And basically, the way, so there are antes, which is basically like a round of a small blind, a big blind, and then a boss blind.
Whoa! Okay.
And each run, if you complete a run, is 8 antes. So potentially 24 hands. When you start up with the small blind and your goal is to get 300 points. Each card you get is assigned an amount of points, or each card you play is assigned an amount of points based on like the face value of the card. So like an ace is 11, face cards are 10, and then number cards correspond to their numbers. That combined with what kind of hand you play. So if you play like a 3 of a kind, that comes with a certain amount of points and a modifier. So it might be like, a 3 of a kind might be, starts out at 50 points, let's say, and a ×2 modifier. So if you play 3 aces and a couple other cards, those 3 aces will count towards it'll be 11, 11, 11. So 33 points there, plus the, let's say 50 cards for the 3 of a kind. So you're at 83 ×2 for the modifier. So 166 points for that hand. But then you throw jokers into the mix, and jokers are like a modifier, and you might be like a hand, a run I had that was going really well was like every diamond you play gets an extra +10 to the multiplier. So that ×2 now becomes ×12. Or if I play a flush of diamonds, I've got a whole huge modifier going for me.
Okay, so
you can start racking up points and stuff like that. And so each hand, each hand you go into, you've got a set number of hands you can play that will count towards your total that you're trying to meet or beat, and a number of discards that you can do. So you might have like, for this hand, I can do 4 hands and I can do 4 discards. So if you get your first set of 8 cards and you don't really have anything that's good to play, you jump out a whole bunch of stuff and try and like get a better hand, make a better hand out of it. In between each round, so like after the small blind, once you meet that threshold, you've got a little shop where you can buy special Joker cards, and the Joker cards have modifiers, and there are like 150 Joker cards to unlock, and you can have basically up to 5 Joker cards in play at any given time. You get cosmic cards that are like, they correspond with the planets, and each, one of them will basically, each one corresponds to a different hand in poker. So if you play a Mars card, that might be the 3 of a kind card, and if you play it, your 3 of a kind starting stats go from level 1 to level 2. And so now playing 3 of a kind gets you more base chips, and it also gives you a higher multiplier as a starting point for when you play it. And you basically get those. I've got a thing up to level 10. And again, you can start kind of compounding and just mixing and matching and doing a whole bunch of stuff. There are tarot cards. You can basically, so your deck starts out 52 normal cards.
Yeah.
You can get modifiers on those cards where it's like, okay, this one's a holographic card, and that means it gets 20 extra chips or something. Or if you play this card, you automatically get a 1.5 multiplier time. Like, so your multiplier is multiplied by 1.5. And so you can start racking up points that way. You can get tarot cards that allow you to like assign or upgrade cards to some of these special extra abilities. You get like lucky cards where, there'll be like a 1 in 5 chance that the multiplier gets added to 20, or a 1 in 5 chance that you get 20 gold coins or whatever, the currency basically that you can use to buy new cards. You can buy booster packs. So you can basically be like, okay, you buy a booster pack, maybe the main booster pack is you buy, you get 3 random cards and you get to choose 1 to add to your deck. Or you get, 5 cards and you can add 2 to your deck, or you can use them. And so there's a huge options for mixing and matching and figuring out what strategy is going to really work with your deck. One of the best run I've had so far, and the one that got me all the way through the 8th round in my first like complete run, was I was leaning into, like, I had a Joker that basically gave me extra points for every diamond, and I got a Joker that gave me like extra multipliers for every flush, and then I got cards throughout that where it was like, okay, choose 3 cards in your hand and you'll turn them into diamonds. So if I take an ace of clubs and a 7 of hearts and a 3 of spades, and suddenly they become an ace and a 7 and a 3 of diamonds. And now I've got 2 aces of diamonds in my deck, and whatnot. You just keep adding to your cards for the run. There are a few cards that are like, oh, this will destroy this card too, or something like that. There's a type of card where it's like a glass card where there's a 1 in, like, you get an added bonus to that card, but there's a 1 in 4 chance it will destroy itself after you play it. So you might have it shatter basically after you play it in a hand. So yeah, you're kind of going through a series of increasingly score point totals that you're trying to match or beat. And sometimes you can get like a great run where you do it in one hand. Sometimes you might need all of the hands to do it. If you ever don't reach that, the run ends and you start fresh. So yeah, that's kind of the roguelike nature of this. But yeah, so my best run so far, I was stacking my deck with as many diamonds cards as I could. And so if I didn't have something that I could like turn into there was one Joker that was basically like a straight or a flush can be done with 4 cards instead of 5. So I was like, okay, cool. I've got 4 diamonds in my deck, and that Joker, boom, there's a flush, and it's a level 7 flush. So I'm starting with this many points just out the gate, and this much of a multiplier out the gate. And then all these extra modifiers kind of get thrown on as you play. It makes way more sense as you get introduced to these mechanics and stuff, and as you play through it. There are also elements where you can skip a blind and you'll get like a voucher or a token or basically some kind of modifier. So there's like a trade-off there of like, okay, I don't really feel like doing that hand, but you can never skip the big boss blind. And the big boss always throws in like a modifier. So once I finished my my 8 ante run and like cleared a run, you can go into an endless mode where it's like, okay, you can just kind of keep playing basically until you can't anymore. And the very next boss thing I got was basically like, all diamonds are debuffed, so you don't get any modifiers, you don't get any points for any diamond cards. So my whole strategy built around using as many diamonds as I can and like always trying to aim for a diamond flush just become, well, I'm fucked now. But there are cards you can get or things you can get that will let you like re-roll a boss's ultimate kind of thing. So maybe I could have turned that into after you play a hand, 3 cards will be face down and you won't necessarily know what they are or something like that. And so you're kind of playing, there's like a mystery element sometimes and stuff like that. So yeah, it is a wildly addictive in the vein of Vampire Survivor, but with poker. There are modifiers where it's like after you play a hand, you'll only draw 3 cards. So if you play a 5-card hand, you're only going to get 3 cards back in your deck, and you have to kind of play with those 3 cards. But if you also discard 1 card, you draw 3 cards. So there's like trade-off in that kind of regard and stuff like that. And the Vampire Survivor-ness comes in. You have different decks as your kind of starting base that are going to be your modifiers. Like you start with like a red deck and a blue deck, and the red deck means you have an extra hand per round that you have as an option to try and get your score. The blue deck is you have an extra discard per round. As you complete challenges and unlock things, you start getting more and more, Joker cards unlocked that'll start appearing in the shop, or decks unlocked. Like I unlocked a deck that was basically like, for your base decks, you get like $1 reward for beating the blind, and then you get like money for each unused hand of the blind. And then if you have like 5 or more dollars, basically, you'll gain interest on that money up to like 5 extra interest dollars or something like that. So the green deck that I unlocked doesn't give you interest, but you get $2 for any unused hand when you win, and $1 for any unused discard for when you win. So if I finish a round in 1 hand and I have 3 hands to go and 4 discards, I've got $6 from the hands and $4 from the discards. So I got $10 extra from that kind of thing. And that money gets used to buy new cards, Joker cards, booster packs, stuff kind of in between rounds. You can buy vouchers that give you for that run, like rerolls cost $3 instead of $5.
Okay.
Or you can unlock a voucher that basically lets you buy cards straight out in the shop and stuff. So yeah, it just has like seemingly an endless variety to these things. I haven't been able to discern what, if anything, carries over from like run to run yet. I think it is mostly, I've unlocked things, so they'll start appearing in the next run, and the next run is just going to be a new fresh start. It is much more roguelike in that manner, as opposed to like, you have some currency that's just done with that run, and some that, does kind of stick with you over the course of the thing. So maybe maybe that's a little bit more Vampire Survivor-y. Mm-hmm. But yeah, lots of collections and stuff that I've been working up and just trying to unlock. And so yeah, I basically like played 3 or 4 hours of that in the lead up to our podcast today. And just been having a fun time with it. It is very much like this can become very addicting very quickly, like Vampire Survivors did. And this will be a nice thing to dive into and play a ton over this next week until Rebirth comes out. And then, but it's also like a very quick and, much like, Vampire Survivor, a run of that's going to be at most 30 minutes. You can go through these hands pretty quickly. And sometimes you just might have a real bad luck of the draw. It's like, well, all I was ever getting was like a pair, or I would discard cards thinking I was going to try and go for this, and I just like the cards never fell that way, and so I just didn't even make the the small blind on this round or something like that. But yeah, a lot of fun. Definitely recommend if you have PlayStation Plus checking out the demo for an hour of it. That got me through a run or two. So I kind of learned the mechanics and stuff, and then I was immediately like, yeah, I want to play more of this. It's $15. Let's do it. So very fun. Any questions or anything else for me?
No, it sounds very fascinating. I will probably check out that 1 hour demo, or 1 hour access to it.
Like really the thing that gets swinging. It's very much a like you learn and you understand it a lot more by playing it than by hearing about it. Or I guess if you like watch somebody play it or something.
I tried watching somebody play it, and I was like, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. It very much have to be like watching somebody play it while explaining what they're doing, what decisions they're making. Because otherwise, it's like, okay, what did they just do? Did they just discard? They just play? What happened? But yeah, trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, yeah, a lot of the modifiers, and the modifiers have like, common, uncommon, rare, legendary kind of thing. So, the better the type of card, most likely the better boon you're going to get from it and stuff like that. I unlocked one Joker card, for example, that was like, okay, anytime you go into a blind, if you have open spots, we're just going to give you 2 extra Joker cards. And so it's like, okay, maybe those Joker cards will be like, they're always helpful, but it's just a matter of like, is your deck designed to use that, or is your playstyle designed to use that? Like I got some that was like one of the best multipliers I got was this will start as a ×1 multiplier, but for every card you add to your deck, you will get that ×1 goes up by 0.25. So by the end of the run, I'd added a dozen cards or something or whatever it was, and I was up to like ×6 for my multiplier. So like all of my numbers started getting added, and then like the multiplier went ×6, and so I'm racking in 10,000 points in a hand or something like that, and just going nuts. So a great like there very much becomes like a strategy to like mixing and matching whatever options you have in that like roguelike style of like here are the 2 options we're giving you. Do either of these work for you? Do you have the money to buy them both? Do you want to buy them both? What do you want to do? And kind of going from there. And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to hopping back into it and enjoying it more. And also I learned, I was like, Balatro, that's got to mean something, right? It was the Roman term for like jester. So it's kind of like it's the Joker card, and the Joker card is very much like the centerpiece of the game and the gameplay and stuff like that. So yeah, shout out to Balatro, and shout out to Wout, who PR person that I've known for a number of years, one of the people working on the show, on the game, who's been very happy with its sudden rise in success and popularity over this last week. So shout out to that. All right, that is gonna do it for this episode. We're wrapping up just in time because we've got places to be anyway. So you can find Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, we just put out a episode on Echo for that D Plus show. I highly suggest people go check that out. We had a really great time kind of like going through that show. I was very uncertain about how I felt about it when we reviewed episode 1 2 weeks ago. And after finishing the season, I had a lot more to say, and I gave it a grade. So go check that out.
There you go. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. In addition to our episodes on Echo, definitely check those out. And then if you want more of my Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth thoughts, that Let's Play series is continuing to occur. So you can go check out more and more of that as those episodes go live Tuesdays and Thursdays. As I said, I've finished the game, so I've got like all of the episodes recorded at this point. So it's just a matter of editing the back half of them, I think, and getting them uploaded and scheduled and all ready to go. So enjoy that. Enjoy Final Fantasy VII Rebirth if you are diving into that this week, as I'm sure we will be talking about that, primarily our early impressions of that in next week's episode. So yeah, lots of fun there. You follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. As always, thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.